Something stirs before anyone can name it. It is not loud, not violent, not dramatic enough for the headlines that race across our screens each day. It is quieter than that quieter, but deeper and inaudible pulse rising from beneath the surface of ordinary life. As though the world itself has developed a second heartbeat. You may have felt it in moments when the room falls still without reason, or in the strange heaviness that settles into your chest late at night. It is the kind of disturbance that does not shout, yet somehow unsettles everything it touches. The Hopi say such moments are not random. They are thresholds in disguise. For the Hopi, time is not a straight line moving forward. It is a circle that remembers, a circle that warns. And there are moments rare, trembling moments when the old voices grow louder than the present. When ancient memory presses against modern noise and asks us to listen, something in the air suggests that one of those moments has returned. Not because danger is arriving, but because balance is slipping. And Hopi prophecy has always spoken to such slips, not as punishments sent from the sky, but as mirrors rising from the earth. Tonight, we step toward one of the most enigmatic visions preserved in their teachings, the Battle of the Two Eagles. It is not a prophecy of fire raining down or mountains falling apart. It is not apocalypse in the way modern imagination loves to picture it. Instead, it is a symbolic vision, a story whispered through generations, carried like a glowing ember through centuries of memory, waiting until the moment when its shapes, its currents, and its symbols begin to look uncomfortably familiar. But before the prophecy can be understood, it must be felt. Hopi wisdom does not begin with explanation. It begins with the body, with sensation, with the subtle recognition that something beneath our everyday thinking has shifted. Many today sense a low humming pressure in the world, an emotional undercurrent that no news report can fully explain. It is a pressure that swells in silence, that wraps around the edges of our lives, that makes everything from small disagreements to global events feel heavier than they once did. Hopi elders would tell us, this feeling is the doorway. The Hopi never offered warnings as doom. They offered them as reflections. To them, prophecy was less about foretelling disaster and more about reminding humanity of what it becomes when it forgets its center. The world has entered such phases before, times when imbalance whispered long before it screamed, when a quiet tremor inside the human spirit signaled that something larger was beginning to move. And our age, with its flickering screens, its constant noise, and its uneasy nights, sits in a similar vibration. In the earliest tellings, the prophecy of the two eagles was not recited to frighten children or predict political futures. It was told as a spiritual teaching, a map of currents that run through the world and through each person. Two immense forces rising from distant horizons, each carrying a different energy, a different temperament, a different shadow. These forces are not nations, though they sometimes wear the clothing of nations in certain eras. They are not leaders, though leaders may embody their tendencies. They are archetypes, patterns, echoes of the fire and ice that coexist within humanity. When the world begins to feel the pressure of these forces, Hopi elders say, it is because their wings have started to unfurl again, casting long symbolic shadows across the earth. People feel the change not in events, but in sensations, restlessness, confusion, a strange hollowness in the noise of modern life. It is a spiritual tremor, not yet visible, but unmistakably present. And that tremor is exactly where the prophecy begins, because the Hopi insist that all great shifts start quietly, beneath thought, beneath language, beneath the surface. But if tonight we speak of eagles, fire, ice, and a trembling world, we do not do so to drown ourselves in fear. We do so because Hopi prophecy asks us to look not outward, but inward. It asks us to understand that imbalance in the world begins as imbalance in the heart, and it reminds us that what rises in the collective begins as something subtle, something almost invisible, in inner dissonance that spreads from person to person until the entire world vibrates in the same uneasy rhythm. We stand, then, in the dim light of a mirror held up by the Hopi not to show us catastrophe, but to show us ourselves. What we feel now, the heaviness, the strange quiet beneath the noise, the sense of waiting for something unnamed, is not the prophecy itself. It is its echo, tapping at the edges of awareness, inviting us to follow it more deeply. And so we step across the threshold the old ones described into the vision of the two eagles. Two forces rising, two wings expanding, two currents, shaping the world with a subtlety so vast that most will never see it with their eyes. They will only feel it, as we do now. And that quiet feeling, the one you cannot quite explain, is where the story truly begins. When the Hopi first spoke of the two eagles, they did not describe creatures of flesh and bone. They spoke instead of vast forces, currents of human intention, so large that no single nation, no leader, no ideology could ever contain them. Each eagle rose from a different horizon, not as enemies, but as reflections of two opposing impulses within the human spirit. Only later, when humanity forgot how to read symbols, did people mistake these forces for political rivals, military blocs, or territorial powers. But the Hopi were never talking about geography, they were talking about energy. The first eagle, they said, rises from the west. Its wings burn with expansion and energy that pushes outward, spreads, transforms, consumes, reshapes. This is the fire of ambition, of visibility, of influence that radiates like heat. It moves quickly, loudly, persuading through brightness and momentum. The Hopi saw in it the human tendency to project, to assert, to overflow. Fire creates, fire destroys. Fire cannot sit still. It is magnificent and dangerous all at once. The second eagle rises from the east, born from a colder sky. Its wings carry endurance, discipline, and control. Instead of rushing outward, it pulls inward, strengthening, tightening, calculating, enduring. This is the frost of strategy, silence, and reserve. Its influence spreads slowly but deeply, threading itself into the foundation of things. Ice preserves, ice constrains. Ice shapes by compressing rather than exploding. Fire and ice, expansion and containment, noise and silence. Two forces that always existed, but in this era, they rise to their fullest height. Not because one must conquer the other, but because humanity has drifted into a tension where these archetypes can no longer remain dormant. The Hopi elders describe their rise as a test, not for the eagles, but for the people who see their shadows. Most will attach themselves blindly to one force or the other, thinking they are choosing sides in a political drama. But the Hopi warned that the moment humanity chooses sides without understanding what these energies represent, the prophecy begins to darken. The danger does not come from the eagles. It comes from identification, from allegiance that grows out of fear rather than clarity. And fear, they said, is the first wind that pushes the world toward imbalance. For when the eagles rise, something else rises with them, a fracture in truth. Not truth as an idea or philosophy, but truth as a stabilizing field that humans rely on without knowing it. The elders warned of a time when information would twist into so many shapes that people would lose their ability to discern what is real. They described a moment when narratives would multiply like reflections in a broken mirror, each one slightly distorted, each one claiming to be the whole. In such a world, truth doesn't disappear, it shatters. And when truth shatters, the mind becomes vulnerable, the heart becomes restless. The world grows easier to manipulate, not by force, but by confusion. The elders said this fracture would be the first sign that the two eagles had entered their confrontation. Not through violence, but through influence. Not through armies, but through perception. Fire influences by projecting outward, by becoming so visible, so loud, so blazing that its presence feels undeniable. It spreads through culture, through spectacle, through the intoxicating rush of movement. It convinces by momentum, not subtlety. Ice influences by moving silently beneath the surface, shaping systems, tightening structures, guiding currents of power through channels unseen. It persuades not by noise, but by inevitability, by patience, by permanence. When these two forms of influence collide, the world does not erupt, it distorts. People begin to feel tension without knowing its origin. Markets wobble without explanation. Leaders speak carefully, saying both too much and too little. Communities feel pressure from conversations that seem to ignite out of nowhere. And individuals, ordinary people, find themselves carrying emotions that don't entirely feel like their own. A heaviness, a fatigue, a flicker of anger that wasn't there yesterday. A sense that everything is slightly more fragile than it used to be. These sensations are not coincidences in Hopi teaching. They are symptoms of two great archetypes brushing against each other, stirring an atmospheric tension that is more spiritual than political. The elders said that when the eagles rise, the sky becomes heavier, not in weather, but in meaning. That is why the fractures in truth feel so overwhelming. They are not only intellectual fractures, they are fractures in the field of human coherence. When coherence breaks, division follows. And division, the Hopi warned, is the shadow each eagle casts. Yet even here, neither eagle is evil. Fire teaches courage. Ice teaches discipline. Fire shows the danger of uncontrolled expansion. Ice reveals the peril of excessive control. Both contain wisdom, both carry distortion, and both become dangerous only when human beings pour themselves into one side completely, forgetting that the world was never meant to be shaped by extremes. The prophecy does not ask us to defeat either eagle. It asks us to see them clearly, humbly, without attachment. Because the moment people stop seeing and start choosing blindly, the world becomes a battleground for forces they do not understand. This is why the Hopi framed prophecy as a mirror that does not flatter, a mirror that reflects the imbalance humanity has tolerated for too long. The rise of the eagles is not a cosmic event unfolding above us. It is a psychological event unfolding within us, magnified until it shapes nations, movements, and global tides. And as the eagles circle higher, the shadows they cast fall closer to the ground, closer to the spaces where people think, feel, decide, and fracture. It is herein the subtle trembling of the world's inner balance that the next part of the prophecy begins to take form. When the shadows of the two eagles lengthen across the world, the Hopi say the battleground does not appear in the sky. It appears in the human heart. This is the great misunderstanding of the prophecy. People imagine armies, collisions, or events so large that they shake countenance. But the elders insist that the true conflict begins long before any outward sign. It begins quietly, invisibly, inside the collective emotional field that humanity shares without ever acknowledging. At first, the influence of the two eagles feels like atmospheric subtle pressure, a distortion of mood more than a change of circumstance. People wake with a weight they didn't have the night before. Small disagreements ignite too quickly. Conversations feel sharper, more brittle. The world is not yet breaking, but something underneath it is shifting, and the human mind senses the tremor long before the news can name it. Hopi wisdom teaches that this sensitivity is not weakness. It is intuition responding to an imbalance that has only begun to ripple outward. In this stage of the prophecy, truth becomes the first casualty, not because anyone destroys it, but because it fractures into reflections. One story becomes 2, then 10, then 100, all contradicting, all persuasive, all carrying fragments of something that once felt whole. The Hopi described this as the splintering of sight, a moment when humanity can no longer tell whether it is seeing reality or the shadows cast by its own fears. In such times, the elders warned, confusion is not merely a mental state, it is a spiritual vulnerability. This fracture in truth is where the eagle's influence deepens. The Western eagle, fire, acts on the world through projection. Its power is outward, expressive, overflowing with the heat of expansion. It thrusts ideas, stories, cultures across the world with a force that feels unavoidable. Fire does not whisper. It insists. It dazzles. It overwhelms through brightness and sheer momentum. Its influence spreads through the hunger for visibility and the pressure to respond quickly, loudly, decisively. Fire does not ask for reflection, it demands reaction. The Eastern eagle ice operates differently. Its power is inward, silent, deliberate. It endures rather than expands, tightening its grip through patience, calculation, and the quiet shaping of systems. Ice persuades not by spectacle, but by structure. It does not shout, yet its presence can be felt in the tension it creates. And that sits beneath the surface like frozen ground waiting for the right pressure to crack. Its influence spreads slowly, but once rooted, it is difficult to uproot. Ice does not demand reaction, it demands alignment. Under the weight of these opposing energies, humanity becomes increasingly reactive. People begin to carry emotions that feel too big for their daily lives: anger without cause, fear without clarity, restlessness without direction. Some lash out, others withdraw. Many confuse the pressure of the collective field with their own internal turmoil. But the Hopi remind us, these feelings are not signs of personal failing. They are signals that a deeper conflict has begun, one that pulls at the seams of human relationships long before nations show the fracture. It is in households where the prophecy becomes painfully visible. Families argue over narratives none of them fully understand, defending positions that were planted by forces oceans away. Friendships strain under the weight of beliefs that once felt harmless. Communities polarize because the emotional tension in the air seeks expression wherever it can find a crack. What begins as a symbolic battle between fire and ice becomes a lived experience of division, played out not in halls of power, but at kitchen tables and group chats in quiet bedrooms where someone lies awake wondering why everything suddenly feels unstable. The elders warn that this is the most dangerous stage, when humanity itself becomes the battlefield. Not because people want conflict, but because they unknowingly carry the energy of the eagles within them. When fire rises unchecked, tempers flare and judgment clouds. When ice grows too strong, hearts harden and empathy recedes. Individuals begin to fight battles that aren't truly theirs, believing they are defending their own values, when, in reality, they are moving in sync with forces they cannot see. This unseen influence shapes nations as easily as it shapes individuals. Alliances shift with startling speed. Leaders speak with caution one moment and intensity the next, as though their words are pulled by currents beyond diplomacy. Policies emerge not from strategy, but from reactions to waves of public emotion that crest and crash unpredictably. Mistrust spreads between countries that once cooperated. Disputes flare over issues that were dormant for decades. The world feels increasingly sensitive, as if the slightest spark could ignite an imbalance that has been quietly accumulating for years. Hopi prophecy does not frame these developments as random. The elders believed that the world reflects the state of human consciousness, and when consciousness fractures, the reflection becomes jagged. The more divided people become inside themselves, the more divided society becomes around them. The field of energy that once held communities together begins to thin, leaving space for fear to seep in. And fear, once rooted, grows like a vine wrapping itself around identity, tightening its grip until clarity becomes incredibly difficult to recover. Yet even in this mounting tension, the Hopi offer a subtle reassurance. The emotional heaviness people feel is not a sign that all is lost. It is a sign that the deeper layers of the prophecy are unfolding, that humanity has reached a point where the inner conflict must surface, must be seen, must be understood, because only what is seen can be healed. In this sense, the rising conflict does not signify doom. It signifies opportunity, the chance to witness the extremes within ourselves, to recognize how easily fire pushes us outward and how quietly ice locks us inward, the chance to realize that the battle between the eagles is not about choosing a side, but about understanding why we are drawn to one at all. And as this realization begins to dawn, slowly, tentatively, the prophecy moves toward its next phase, where the world itself begins to respond, not through metaphor, but through unmistakable signs, not in the sky of symbols, but in the earth beneath our feet. The Hopi have always taught that the earth is not a passive stage on which human stories unfold. She is a living being, breathing, remembering, reacting. And when humanity's inner world begins to fracture, the outer world eventually mirrors that fracture, not as punishment, not as anger, but as reflection, as correction, as a reminder that the balance sustaining all life is not merely moral or spiritual, but planetary. That is why the elders warned. When the influence of the two eagles grows strong enough to divide the hearts of people, the earth will begin to show signs of strain. Subtle at first, then unmistakable. Animals, they said, would be the first to sense it. Creatures whose instincts are older than human memory start behaving in ways that defy their patterns. Birds migrating too early or too late. Fish gathering in places they never sought before. Insects appearing where they don't belong. Wolves, deer, and predators altering their territories as though trying to avoid attention that humans can feel directly. The Hopi believed animals can sense spiritual winds currents of imbalance that sweep across the world before any physical manifestation appears. To modern minds, such behavior seems arbitrary, but to Hopi eyes, it is a message. The field of balance is shifting. Then comes the weather. Not in apocalyptic spectacles, but in disruptions that feel strangely out of rhythm to sudden, too frequent, too unseasonal to ignore. Storms that appear without warning, winters that refuse to behave like winter, summers that burn hotter than memory, long droughts breaking into unexpected floods, patterns that once sustained entire regions begin to lose their center. The Hopi describe this not as catastrophe, but as Koyaanisqatsi, life out of balance. This idea is not a prophecy by itself. It is a worldview, a lens through which elders understood the relationship between human consciousness and the natural world. When humanity forgets balance, life forgets balance. When people become fractured, the climate becomes fractured. When societies lose their rhythm, the seasons lose theirs too. Everything reflects everything else, because everything is woven together. And yet, the elders were clear. The earth does not react out of hostility, she reacts out of necessity. A spinning top wobbles when its center weakens. A river overflows when debris blocks its flow. A forest burns not only to destroy but to reset, to renew, to make space for what is coming next. Natural disturbances, in Hopi understanding, are not signs of wrath. They are signals, invitations to pay attention before the imbalance grows too large. In recent years, many people around the world have reported sensing something in the air: a heaviness, a tension, an atmospheric pressure that has nothing to do with barometers or humidity. Even on calm days, the sky feels charged, as if holding a breath it cannot release. The Hopi foresaw this as well. They described a time when the atmosphere itself would feel strained, not because of weather patterns, but because of the spiritual weight accumulating in the human world: fear, division, confusion, longing, all pressing upward until the sky seems to carry the emotional burden of millions. This is not metaphor, it is resonance. Humans and earth share the same field. When the collective heart tightens, the earth tightens. When people lose trust, the winds shift. When the emotional climate swings wildly, the physical climate eventually echoes it. In this sense, the earth becomes a teacher, reflecting back humanity's own imbalance in ways too large to ignore. But this reflection is not the end of the prophecy. It is the beginning of the next stage, the moment when the world reaches an uneasy stillness. A pause so profound it seems as though everything has stopped moving, even while events continue unfolding in the background. This is the threshold the Hopi call the turning time. Every great cycle, they say, arrives at such a moment when the world inhales deeply before something shifts. The turning time is not marked by a single event. It is a phase, a narrowing passage that humanity must pass through after imbalance becomes undeniable. It begins when both the fire of the western eagle and the ice of the eastern eagle reach their limits. Fire burns brightly, fiercely, impressively, but if it grows too intense, it consumes itself. Ice strengthens, steadies, preserves, but if it tightens too much, it cracks. When these forces exhaust their own extremes, neither can advance without exposing the true cost of their influence. This exhaustion is the signal that humanity stands on the threshold of transformation. During the turning time, the world may appear strangely calm on the surface. Markets fluctuate, alliances shift, leaders speak with urgency, and communities feel a rising anxiety. But beneath all this, there is a deeper quiet, a silence that feels heavy, almost electric. The Hopi compared it to the silence before lightning breaks through a swollen sky. Not peaceful silence, charged silence, dense silence, silence that waits. It is in this silence that humanity faces its greatest vulnerability and its greatest power. The turning time asks questions that cannot be avoided. Will we continue feeding the extremes that brought us here? Will we cling to fire or freeze into ice? Will we let fear harden into division? Or will we notice the patterns repeating and choose something else entirely? The Hopi remind us that cycles repeat not because fate demands it, but because people do. The turning time is a doorway, a narrow passage between the world we know and the possibility of the fifth world. It is a passage where illusions collapse, old beliefs fall away, and individuals find themselves confronting truths they have long resisted. For some, this feels like loss. For others, awakening. And to walk through this passage, humanity must remember something ancient, something nearly forgotten. Clarity is found not in noise, but in stillness. This stillness is not resignation, it is recognition. It is the deep knowing that emerges only when reaction gives way to awareness. Only in this quiet does the next force of the prophecy begin to rise, a force not of fire, not of ice, but of balance itself. And from here, the prophecy turns toward the most profound element of the Hopi vision, the hidden river beneath everything. In Hopi teachings, every great struggle carries within it a hidden current, steady, enduring, moving beneath the visible conflict like an underground river shaping the land above. This current is never the loudest force. It does not flare like fire. It does not harden like ice. It simply flows, quietly, persistently, waiting for the moment when humanity grows tired enough of extremes to finally notice it again. The elders called this current the third force, the river beneath. It is not a combatant in the battle of the two eagles. It has no wings, no talons, no desire to dominate or restrain. Instead, it represents something far more ancient, the memory of balance, the wisdom of the middle path, the clarity that cannot be manipulated by fear or noise. During the turning time, when fire exhausts itself and ice begins to crack, this hidden river rises, not in dramatic waves, but in subtle inner shifts that individuals first sense within themselves. A person may wake one morning with an unexpected calm, or a desire to step back from conflict, or an intuition to listen rather than react. Another may feel a pull toward compassion, reflection, or a softened understanding of someone they had grown divided from. These feelings do not arrive with fanfare. They arrive like whispers. This is how awakening begins, in Hopi tradition, not as revelation written across the sky, but as a quiet turning of the heart. The elders taught that those who respond to this whisper become anchors in their community's points of stability in a world shaking under the weight of its own imbalance. These individuals do not preach or command. They do not take sides in the fire-ice struggle. They simply embody a presence that others can feel, a presence that steadies the emotional field around them. Their clarity ripples outward. One calm person steadies a household. One steady household influences a neighborhood. A community grounded in awareness shifts the consciousness of an entire region. This is how the river grows stronger through countless small awakenings that eventually weave themselves into something large enough to challenge the extremes. Fire loses some of its urgency in the presence of calm. Ice loses some of its rigidity in the presence of compassion. The two eagles do not disappear, but their hold weakens. Their shadows lighten. Hopi teachings connect this awakening to Masao, the guardian spirit of humility, balance, and responsibility. Masao reminds humanity that harmony is not created by force, but by the willingness to live gently upon the earth and truthfully with one another. When people act with humility instead of pride, with responsibility instead of reaction, they feed the river beneath rather than the wings above. As more individuals awaken, the third force rises like groundwater filling a dry canyon. Slowly at first, then steadily, then undeniably. The world begins to shift not through dramatic miracles, but through thousands of unseen acts. A conflict escalated, a harsh judgment softened, a bridge rebuilt between people who thought they had grown irreversibly divided. These subtle changes accumulate, and over time, they form the foundation of what the Hopi call the path toward the fifth world, a world shaped not by extremes but by restored balance. Yet the elders were clear. The prophecy does not guarantee this outcome. It offers possibilities, not certainties. Humanity's choices remain at the center of everything. If fear continues to spread, if people cling to fire or freeze into ice, the turning time can collapse into a painful era of correction, a spiral of instability, where the earth is forced to restore balance through hardship rather than awakening. But if enough individuals choose awareness over reaction, humility over pride, unity over division, the river beneath becomes a force powerful enough to shift the destiny of nations. Hopi prophecy emphasizes that humanity's influence is far greater than it realizes. Every thought, every intention, every emotional response contributes to the collective field that shapes the world. The question is never whether the eagles rise. The question is whether we feed their shadows. And so the prophecy ends not with a declaration, but with a choice. A choice made not once, but continually, in the smallest and most ordinary moments of life. The Hopi never meant for the tale of the two eagles to be a story about distant forces battling in the sky. They meant it to be a mirror reflecting the fire and ice within each of us and the quiet river that waits beneath our conflicts, ready to rise whenever we remember how to hear it. As the echoes of the prophecy settle around us, a gentle truth emerges. The future is not something that happens to humanity. It is something humanity generates through its consciousness. The eagles may circle overhead, casting their long symbolic shadows, but they do not decide the fate of the world. They only reveal it. The real turning point is internal. The real battleground is emotional. The real prophecy is shaped by the energy we choose to feed, whether we amplify fear, division, and distortion, or whether we strengthen the river of balance rising quietly beneath us. And so we end where all Hopi teachings end, with a question. What energy am I feeding? Which future am I helping to create, one of imbalance, or one of awakening? If you feel the river beneath you stirring, if you sense the quiet current of balance rising inside your own life, then the Hopi would say the prophecy is already unfolding, not in the sky above, but in the heart within. Thank you for walking this path tonight. And if you wish to journey deeper into Hopi wisdom, ancient warnings, and the hidden prophecies that continue shaping our modern world, Stay with us. There are more mysteries waiting just beyond the next turning.